The fluorescent lights of Denver International Airport buzzed overhead, like mechanical insects casting harsh shadows across Maya Rodriguez's tired face. She stood at baggage claim carousel number 7, watching the same black suitcase circle past for the third time. Her flight from Portland had been delayed 2 hours. Her coffee had gone cold, and now this. Maya rubbed her temples, feeling the familiar weight of anxiety settling in her chest. 3 weeks ago, she had walked out of Meridian Design Studios after 7 years, leaving behind a steady paycheck and the approval of her family. Her mother's voice still echoed in her mind. Mija, art is beautiful, but it doesn't pay the bills. The carousel groaned to a halt. Only a handful of passengers remained, their faces wearing the universal expression of travel fatigue mixed with growing irritation. Maya approached the lone black suitcase, checking the tag twice before lifting it from the belt. Something felt off. It was heavier than she remembered, and when she ran her fingers along the zipper, the texture was different, smoother. "Excuse me?" The voice came from behind her, deep and slightly breathless. Maya turned to find a man about her age, sandy brown hair, disheveled from travel, green eyes scanning the empty carousel with the kind of intensity she recognized in fellow overthinkers. "I think," he began, then paused, studying her face. "Did you by any chance grab the wrong suitcase?" Maya glanced down at the bag in her hand, then at the identical one he was wheeling. "You've got to be kidding me." Connor Walsh. He extended his hand, and when their fingers touched, Maya felt a small jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with airport static. "Maya Rodriguez." She held up the suitcase. "I'm guessing this belongs to you." Connor nodded, his expression shifting from relieved to something more complex, curiosity maybe, or the kind of recognition that comes not from memory, but from an inexplicable sense of rightness. "Where were you headed?" Maya asked as they exchanged bags. "Originally Glacier National Park. Research for a book." Connor's fingers lingered on the handle of his suitcase. "You've ought ice Estes Park. I needed—" Maya paused, searching for words that wouldn't reveal too much. "A change of scenery." The airport was beginning to empty around them, the usual evening exodus of travelers eager to reach their final destinations. Maya should have been heading to her rental car, driving the 3 hours to her cabin reservation. Instead, she found herself standing in the artificial twilight of the terminal, reluctant to break whatever spell had settled between them. "This is going to sound crazy," Connor said, "but would you like to grab a coffee? Make sure we actually got the right bags this time." "Oh, no." Maya's rational mind cataloged all the reasons to say no. She didn't know this man. She had a schedule to keep. She was supposed to be finding herself in solitude, not getting distracted by strangers with kind eyes and easy smiles. "Yes," she heard herself say. The coffee shop near Gate B17 was one of those generic airport chains that existed in a liminal space between destinations. Maya chose a table by the window where she could watch planes taxi across the tarmac, their lights blinking like earthbound stars. Connor returned with 2 cups and a nervous energy that seemed to vibrate just beneath his skin. "Lavender oat milk latte," he said, setting the cup in front of her. "You look like someone who might appreciate something a little unconventional." Maya wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, surprised by the accuracy of his guess. "What gave me away?" "The paint under your fingernails. The fact that you've been sketching on your napkin since you sat down." Connor settled into his chair, cradling his black coffee like a prayer. "I'm a writer. I notice details." Maya glanced down at the napkin where she had unconsciously drawn the curve of airplane wings, the geometric patterns of the terminal ceiling. Occupational hazard. "What kind of art do you do?" The question hung in the air between them, simple on the surface, but weighted with implications Maya wasn't ready to unpack. She had been asking herself the same thing for 3 weeks, ever since she'd cleaned out her desk and walked away from the safety of commercial design. "I'm figuring that out," she said finally. Connor leaned back in his chair, studying her with the same intensity he'd shown the baggage carousel. "That's either the most honest thing I've heard all day or the most terrifying." "Both, probably." Outside the window, a plane lifted into the darkening sky, its departure lights carving a path through the clouds. Maya watched until it disappeared, feeling the familiar tug of wanderlust that had been her constant companion since childhood. "What about you?" she asked. "What kind of books do you write?" Connor's expression shifted, a shadow passing across his features like clouds over the sun. "Travel narratives." The intersection of place and identity, how landscapes shape the people who inhabit them. He paused, rolling his coffee cup between his palms. At least that's what I used to write. Used to, oh, writer's block is a hell of a thing. Connor's laugh held no humor. 2 years since my last book came out, and my editor is breathing down my neck for the next one. I keep sitting down to write and nothing comes. It's like the words have just dried up. Maya recognized the frustration in his voice, the particular kind of creative desperation that came from losing touch with the thing that defined you. She had felt it herself in the sterile environment of the design studio churning out corporate logos and website layouts, while her sketchbooks filled with dreams she was too afraid to pursue. Maybe you're trying too hard, she said. Sometimes the best art happens when we stop forcing it. Connor met her eyes across the small table. Is that what you're doing, stopping the force? Something like that. Maya traced the rim of her cup with one finger. I quit my job 3 weeks ago. Haven't told my family yet. They think I'm on vacation. The admission surprised her with its honesty. She hadn't meant to tell him, hadn't planned to voice the secret that had been eating away at her insides like acid. Why? Connor's question was gentle without judgment. Because I was dying a little bit every day. The words came out in a rush, and Maya felt simultaneously lighter and more terrified than she had in months. 7 years of designing marketing materials for companies I didn't believe in, creating art that had no soul. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that I'd pursue my real work on the side, but there was never time. There was always another deadline, another client, another reason to postpone the life I actually wanted. Connor was quiet for a long moment, his coffee growing cold between his hands. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I know that feeling. The slow suffocation of dreams deferred. Around them, the coffee shop was beginning to close. The barista was wiping down tables, stacking chairs, with the practiced efficiency of someone who had performed this ritual 1,000 times before. Maya realized they had been talking for over an hour, the conversation flowing with an ease that typically took months to develop. I should go, she said, but made no move to stand. Yeah, me too. Connor checked his phone, then looked back at her. This is going to sound presumptuous, but I have to ask. Would you consider a detour? What kind of detour? On Estes Park is only about 2 hours from Glacier. We could, Connor paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully. We could travel together. For the research, for the company, for whatever reason feels right. Maya's heart performed a complicated dance against her ribs. Every instinct screamed caution. She didn't know this man hadn't planned for a companion, was supposed to be figuring out her life in solitude. But there was something in his eyes, a vulnerability that matched her own, that made the idea feel less like recklessness and more like destiny. I don't usually do things like this, she said. Neither do I. I'm going through a complicated time. I'm not sure I'd be very good company. I'm probably the most blocked writer you'll ever meet. The bar is pretty low. Despite herself, Maya smiled. When you put it like that, is that a yes? Maya looked out the window at the planes, continuing their eternal dance of departure and arrival, carrying passengers toward destinations unknown. She thought about her empty cabin reservation, her family's unfinished phone calls, the job applications she wasn't ready to send. It's a yes, she said. They met the next morning at a diner on the outskirts of Denver, the kind of place that served coffee in thick white mugs and had a pie case that belonged in a Norman Rockwell painting. Maya arrived first, choosing a corner booth where she could watch the parking lot and second-guess her decision in private. She had spent the night in an airport hotel, lying awake and replaying their conversation, analyzing every word for signs that she was making a massive mistake. The rational voice in her head, the one that sounded suspiciously like her mother, reminded her that she knew nothing about Connor Walsh beyond what he had chosen to share in an hour-long conversation. But when he walked through the diner door, scanning the room until his eyes found hers, Maya felt the same inexplicable rightness that had drawn her to say yes in the first place. Second thoughts, he asked, sliding into the booth across from her. Third and fourth thoughts, Maya admitted. You. At least fifth, maybe sixth. Connor signaled the waitress for coffee. But I'm here. You're here. They ordered breakfast neither of them was particularly hungry for, and spread maps across the scratched Formica table. Connor had outlined a route that would take them through Rocky Mountain National Park with stops in small mountain towns that existed primarily to serve hikers and tourists seeking authentic Western experiences. We could take our time, he said, tracing the highway with one finger. See what catches our attention. Maya studied the map, noting the way his proposed route meandered rather than following the most direct path. It was the kind of journey that prioritized discovery over efficiency, the antithesis of everything her old life had valued. What's your timeline? She asked. Flexible. My editor thinks I'm researching in Glacier for the next 2 weeks. As long as I come back with something resembling inspiration, the specific geography doesn't matter. And if you don't find inspiration, Connor's smile was rueful, then I'll probably have to consider a career change, which given present company doesn't seem like the worst fate in the world. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. You're very confident for someone who met me 12 hours ago. Not confident, hopeful. Connor leaned forward, his expression serious. Look, I know this is crazy. We're essentially strangers, and we're talking about spending 2 weeks together based on nothing more than good conversation and mutual life crises. But sometimes the best things happen when we stop trying to control every variable. The waitress arrived with their food, interrupting the moment but not dispelling its intensity. Maya picked at her eggs, thinking about the careful life she had constructed and systematically dismantled. 3 weeks ago, she would never have considered such an impulsive decision. 3 weeks ago, she had been a different person. Okay, she said finally. Okay. Okay, let's be crazy. Let's take the scenic route and see what happens. Connor's smile transformed his entire face, erasing the shadows that had lingered around his eyes since the night before. Really, Avita? Really, but I have conditions. Name them. We split everything 50-50, gas, hotels, meals. This isn't a date, it's a collaborative exploration. Agreed. What else? Maya hesitated, then forged ahead. We're both running from something. I think that's part of why this feels right. But I need to know that if I tell you things about why I really quit my job, about what I'm afraid of, you won't use them. In your writing, I mean. Connor's expression grew serious. You have my word. This trip, whatever happens between us, it stays between us unless you say otherwise. And if we decide this was a terrible idea, then we part ways with no hard feelings and a good story. Maya extended her hand across the table. Partners. Connor shook it, his grip warm and sure. Partners. Outside the diner window, the Rocky Mountains rose against the morning sky like a promise of adventures yet to come. Maya felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of the knot of anxiety that had taken up permanent residence beneath her ribs. For the first time in months, she was looking forward to the unknown. They loaded their bags into Maya's rental car, a practical Honda that seemed designed for suburban commutes rather than mountain adventures, and headed west toward the foothills. Connor had claimed the passenger seat and the responsibility for navigation, though Maya noticed he spent more time watching the landscape than consulting the map. Tell me about your last book, Maya said as they passed through Golden, the highway beginning its gradual climb toward the Continental Divide. Connor was quiet for a moment, his fingers tapping an unconscious rhythm against his knee. It was about a small town in Montana where I spent a summer. Glacier Creek, population 847. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone and strangers are either welcomed with suspicious hospitality or politely frozen out until they prove themselves. Which were you? Frozen out initially. I was 28, carrying a camera and a notebook, asking questions about local history and family stories. They thought I was either a journalist looking for scandal or a city boy playing at being rustic. Maya glanced at him, noting the way his jaw tightened as he spoke. But you won them over. Eventually, there was this old rancher, Ernest Mayfield, who took pity on me, invited me to help with the cattle drive that summer, taught me to read weather patterns to understand the rhythm of life that's been essentially unchanged for 100 years. It sounds beautiful. It was, and it broke my heart. The honesty in his voice made Maya's chest tighten. She recognized the tone, the particular sadness that came from losing something you didn't know you needed until it was gone. What happened? Ernest died the winter after I left. Heart attack while checking on the herd during a blizzard. I got a letter from his daughter thanking me for the book, saying he'd been proud to see their way of life honored in print. Connor turned to look out the passenger window. But by the time the book was published, half the ranches in the valley had been sold to developers. The town I wrote about, the community I fell in love with, it's essentially gone. Maya absorbed this understanding now. The weight Connor carried, the pressure of being responsible for preserving worlds that were disappearing even as he tried to capture them. Is that why you can't write? She asked gently. Partially. It's hard to celebrate places when you know your attention might hasten their destruction. Travel writing has become this weird form of colonization. We find beautiful, untouched places and then publish detailed guides for how other people can find them too. They drove in comfortable silence for several miles, the landscape growing more dramatic as they gained elevation. Pine trees lined the highway, their branches heavy with the early snow that dusted the mountains like powdered sugar. What about you? Connor asked eventually. What kind of art do you want to make when you're not designing corporate materials? Maya felt the familiar flutter of excitement mixed with terror that accompanied thoughts of her abandoned dreams. Illustrations, children's books maybe, but also, I've always wanted to create art that helps people see beauty in ordinary moments. The way light falls across a coffee cup, the expression on someone's face when they think no one is watching. That sounds profound. It sounds impractical. Maya's laugh was tinged with bitterness. My family immigrated from El Salvador when my mom was pregnant with me. They sacrificed everything for stability, for the promise that their children would have better opportunities. Art doesn't feel like honoring that sacrifice, but unhappiness doesn't honor it either. The simple statement hung between them, profound in its clarity. Maya had never thought of it that way, that pursuing security at the expense of joy might be its own form of disrespect to her parents' struggles. My dad died when I was 16, she said quietly. Car accident. My mom never remarried, worked 2 jobs to put me and my sister through college. She's never said it outright, but I know she sees my art as a luxury she couldn't afford to give me. Have you ever shown her your work? Your real work? Maya shook her head. She's only seen the commercial stuff. Clean, profitable, safe. Maybe she'd surprise you. Maybe. Maya didn't sound convinced. They stopped for lunch in Idaho Springs, a former mining town that had reinvented itself as a tourist destination. The main street was lined with shops selling Native American jewelry and vintage Western wear, the kind of calculated authenticity that made Connor wince. This is what I'm talking about, he said as they walked past a store advertising genuine frontier experience next to a Starbucks. How do you write about places like this without either lying or being condescending? Maya paused in front of a gallery window, studying a landscape painting that captured the surrounding mountains with photographic precision, but somehow missed their essential wildness. Maybe the trick is writing about the layers, she said. The mining town that was the tourist destination, that is the community that persists underneath all of it. Truth isn't always singular. Connor followed her gaze to the painting. You see something I'm missing. The artist is technically skilled, but they're painting what they think people want to see rather than what's actually there. The mountains in that painting are too perfect, too postcard pretty. They don't have the danger, the indifference to human presence that makes them really beautiful. Oh, show me what you mean. Maya glanced around, then pulled a small sketchbook from her purse. She found a bench facing the mountains and began to draw, her pencil moving in quick, confident strokes. Connor watched over her shoulder as the peaks took shape on the paper, still recognizable as the same range but captured with a rawness the gallery painting lacked. See the way the shadows cut across that ridge? Maya pointed with her pencil. And how the tree line isn't a neat horizontal band, but something more chaotic. The artist in the gallery cleaned all of that up, made it prettier but less true. Connor studied the sketch, then looked back at the mountains. You're right, I can see the difference. That's what I want to do with my art. Show people the beauty that exists in imperfection, in the messiness of real life. That's exactly what the writing should do too. They looked at each other across the small space of the bench, recognition sparking between them. Maya felt it again, that sense of rightness, of finding someone who understood not just her words, but the intention behind them. We should go, she said, suddenly self-conscious under the intensity of his gaze. Yeah, Connor agreed, but neither of them moved. A family walked past, children arguing about which store to visit, first parents negotiating the logistics of souvenir shopping. Ordinary life continuing around them, while Maya felt suspended in a moment that seemed to contain infinite possibility. Maya, Connor said quietly. Yeah, I'm glad we grabbed the wrong suitcases. Maya smiled, closing her sketchbook. Me too. They reached Estes Park as the sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold that made Maya's fingers itch for her watercolors. The town was smaller than she had expected, nestled in a valley that felt like a natural amphitheater with the Rocky Mountains as its dramatic backdrop. It's beautiful, Connor said, and Maya heard genuine wonder in his voice, rather than the professional assessment she might have expected from a travel writer. They found a modest motel on the edge of town, the kind of place that had probably been charming in the 1960s and now existed in that liminal space between vintage and shabby. The desk clerk, a weathered woman with kind eyes, checked them in with the easy friendliness of someone accustomed to travelers. 2 rooms, Maya had specified, earning a knowing smile from the clerk that made her cheeks burn. "Course, honey. Y'all here for the hiking." "Among other things," Connor replied diplomatically. Their rooms were adjacent, connected by a thin wall that would probably transmit every sound. Maya sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the door that separated them and trying to process the day's events. 12 hours ago, she had been planning a solitary retreat. Now she was sharing an adventure with a man she barely knew, but felt drawn to in ways that defied logic. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. "Maya, want to grab dinner?" She opened the door to find Connor had changed into jeans and a flannel shirt that made his eyes look greener. "There's a place down the street that's supposed to have good burgers and local beer." The restaurant was exactly what Maya had hoped for: dim lighting, worn wooden floors, and the comfortable buzz of conversation from locals and tourists alike. They claimed a table by the window where they could watch the town settling into evening. "So," Connor said after they'd ordered, "now that we've committed to this crazy plan, maybe we should establish some ground rules. Beyond the financial arrangements and the confidentiality agreement, beyond those." Connor leaned forward, his expression serious. "We're both dealing with complicated emotions. Life transitions, creative blocks, family expectations. This trip could either be exactly what we need or a spectacular disaster." Maya appreciated his directness. "What are you proposing?" "Honesty. If something isn't working, if you need space, if I'm pushing too hard for conversation, if this whole arrangement starts feeling wrong, we say so. No passive aggression, no martyrdom." "Agreed. What else?" "We respect each other's work time. I know I said I'm blocked, but I'm hoping this trip will change that. If inspiration strikes, I might need to disappear with my laptop for a few hours." "Same here. I brought my art supplies, and I tend to get absorbed when I'm drawing." Their food arrived, interrupting the negotiation. Maya bit into her burger and found it was everything the reviews had promised: locally sourced beef, hand-cut fries, the kind of meal that satisfied both hunger and soul. "One more thing," Connor said around a bite of food. "No expectations about romance. I know we're traveling together, sharing this experience, but I don't want either of us to feel pressured into anything beyond friendship." Maya felt a small stab of disappointment that she immediately tried to suppress. "Of course, this is about personal growth and creative inspiration, not romantic entanglement." "Exactly." They shook hands across the table, sealing their platonic partnership. Maya told herself the spark she felt when their fingers touched was purely imaginative, a projection of her own loneliness onto an objectively attractive man who was being refreshingly mature about boundaries. After dinner, they walked through the town center, window shopping and people watching. Estes Park revealed itself as a place caught between its natural beauty and its commercial aspirations. Gift shops selling mass-produced mountain crafts nestled next to galleries featuring genuine local artists, chain restaurants, competing with family-owned establishments that had been serving visitors for generations. "It's like Idaho Springs, but with more integrity," Maya observed. "How do you mean?" "The commercialization feels less desperate, more organic, like the town knows what it is and isn't trying to be something else to please tourists." Connor nodded, pulling out his phone to make a note. "That's a good observation. The relationship between authenticity and economy in tourist destinations." "Are you working?" "Sorry, occupational hazard. Writer brain never really turns off." Maya understood completely. She had been unconsciously cataloging colors and textures all day, storing visual information for future art projects she might never have the courage to pursue. They found themselves at the edge of town, where the streetlights gave way to star-filled darkness. The mountains loomed around them, vast and indifferent, and somehow comforting in their permanence. "Can I ask you something?" Connor said, his voice soft in the mountain quiet. "Sure. When you quit your job, did you have a plan? Or did you just jump?" Maya considered the question, remembering the moment she had walked into her supervisor's office and handed in her resignation. "I jumped. I kept waiting for the right time, for enough money saved for a clear vision of what came next. Finally, I realized I was just making excuses." "Do you regret it?" "Every day, and also not at all." Maya laughed at the contradiction. "I'm terrified about money, about disappointing my family, about the possibility that I'm deluding myself about my talent. But I also feel more alive than I have in years." That's exactly how I felt when I published my first book. Pure terror mixed with pure joy. "Why can't you write now?" Connor was quiet for a long moment, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Because I'm afraid the first book was a fluke. Because I'm afraid of writing something big. Because I'm afraid of writing something good that contributes to the destruction of the places I love." "So you write nothing instead?" "So I write nothing instead." Maya turned to face him fully. "You know that's not actually safer, right? The fear of failure isn't protecting you from anything. It's just preventing you from living." "I know that intellectually. But knowing and believing are different things." "Exactly." They stood there in the mountain darkness, two people who had built careful lives around avoiding the very risks that might lead to happiness. Maya felt the weight of all her own unwritten stories, unpainted pictures, unlived possibilities. "Maybe that's what this trip is about," she said finally. "Learning to believe in ourselves again." Connor met her eyes, and in the dim light from distant street lamps, Maya saw something shift in his expression. "Maybe it is." A cool breeze swept down from the mountains, carrying the scent of pine and the promise of snow. Maya shivered, and Connor moved slightly closer, not quite touching, but near enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "We should head back," he said, but neither of them moved. "Yeah," Maya agreed, equally reluctant to break the spell of the moment. Eventually, practical concerns won out over romantic atmosphere. They walked back to the motel in comfortable silence, each lost in private thoughts about the day's revelations and tomorrow's possibilities. "Thank you," Maya said when they reached their adjacent doors. "For what?" "For suggesting this, for being honest about your fears, for making me feel less alone in mine." Connor's smile was soft and genuine. "Thank you for saying yes. For trusting a stranger with your adventure." "Good night, Connor." "Good night, Maya." Maya closed her door and leaned against it, listening to the sound of Connor moving around in the next room. She thought about their conversation over dinner, about the careful boundaries they had established, and the electric current that seemed to run between them, regardless of their rational intentions. Tomorrow they would venture deeper into the mountains, into landscapes that promised both beauty and challenge. Tonight, Maya allowed herself to acknowledge that she was no longer entirely sure which would prove more dangerous, the wilderness they planned to explore, or the connection growing between two people who had sworn off romantic complications. Outside her window, the mountains stood sentinel against the star-filled sky, keeping their ancient secrets, while two temporary visitors tried to figure out the mysteries of their own hearts. Maya woke to the sound of her phone buzzing against the nightstand, a relentless vibration that pulled her from dreams of mountain peaks and green eyes. The display showed her sister Elena's name, along with 3 missed calls and a string of increasingly worried text messages. "Where are you? Mom tried calling your hotel in Estes Park, and they said you never checked in." "Maya, seriously, call me back. Mom is freaking out. If you don't respond in the next hour, I'm calling the police." Maya sat up in bed, reality crashing over her like cold water. In her excitement about the unexpected journey with Connor, she had completely forgotten to update her family about her change of plans. She quickly typed a response: "I'm fine. Had to change hotels. We'll call later today." Before Elena could respond with more questions, Maya silenced her phone and set it aside. Through the thin motel walls, she could hear Connor moving around in the adjacent room, the sound of running water, the gentle thud of footsteps on worn carpet. The intimacy of these ordinary sounds made her stomach flutter with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Maya, I grabbed coffee from the lobby. Want some?" She opened the door to find Connor holding 2 steaming cups, his hair still damp from the shower. He had changed into hiking clothes, worn jeans, and a green flannel that brought out the gold flecks in his eyes. You're an angel, Maya said, accepting the coffee gratefully. What time is it? 8:30. I thought we could grab breakfast and then explore the national park. Unless you had other plans. Maya glanced at her silenced phone, thinking of the complicated conversation she would eventually need to have with her family. Actually exploring sounds perfect. When they drove into Rocky Mountain National Park, as morning mist clung to the valleys, creating an ethereal landscape that seemed to exist outside of time. Connor had convinced the park ranger to recommend less crowded trails, places where they could experience the wilderness without the constant reminder of other tourists. Most people stick to the main scenic drives, the ranger had explained, circling several locations on their map. But if you really want to see the park, these trails will take you into country that hasn't changed much since the Ute tribes hunted here. Maya drove while Connor navigated, his eyes constantly moving between the map and the landscape outside. She noticed he had begun taking notes again, quick observations scrawled in a small notebook that he thought she couldn't see. Working, she asked. Connor looked up, slightly guilty. Just capturing details. The way the light filters through the aspen groves, how the altitude affects the quality of silence. Nothing substantial. It's a start, though. Maybe. He closed the notebook and focused on the road ahead. What about you? Feeling inspired. Maya considered the question as they climbed toward the tree line, the landscape growing more dramatic with each curve. Overwhelmed, mostly. There's too much beauty to process all at once. I know what you mean. Sometimes I think that's why we create art, to slow down moments that would otherwise pass too quickly. They parked at a trailhead that seemed designed for solitude rather than crowds. The parking area held only two other cars, and the trail markers promised a moderate hike to an alpine lake that most tourists overlooked in favor of more famous destinations. Maya shouldered her day pack, checking to ensure her sketchbook and pencils were secure. Connor carried a larger pack that contained water, snacks, and what appeared to be serious photography equipment. You didn't mention you were a photographer too, Maya said as they began walking. Hobby mostly, but my editor wants visual elements for the next book, assuming I ever write it. The trail wound through dense pine forest before opening into meadows that had already surrendered to autumn's influence. Aspen trees created islands of gold against the evergreen backdrop, their leaves trembling in the mountain breeze with its sound like whispered secrets. They hiked in comfortable silence, each absorbed in their own observations. Maya found herself cataloging colors and textures, the way shadow and light played across Connor's profile when he stopped to adjust his camera settings, the delicate frost patterns on late-blooming wildflowers, the infinite variations of green that painted the mountainsides. After an hour of steady climbing, they reached the lake, a mirror of still water that reflected the surrounding peaks with startling clarity. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant call of a loon and the gentle lap of water against smooth stones. Mike, yeah, I, Connor breathed, pulling out his camera. Maya found a flat boulder near the water's edge and opened her sketchbook. For several minutes, they worked in parallel, Connor capturing the scene through his lens, while Maya translated it onto paper with quick, confident strokes. Can I see? Connor asked eventually, settling beside her on the boulder. Maya hesitated, then turned the sketchbook toward him. She had drawn not just the lake and mountains, but the quality of the moment, the sense of discovery, the weight of solitude, the feeling of being connected to something larger than human concerns. This is incredible, Connor said quietly. You've captured something my camera missed. What? The emotional landscape, the feeling of the place, not just its appearance. Maya studied her own work with fresh eyes, seeing what he meant. Photography can't lie the way drawing can. Explain that. A photograph has to show what's actually there. But when I draw, I can emphasize the elements that create the feeling I want to convey. I can make the mountains more imposing, the water more serene, the sky more infinite. Connor nodded slowly. That's what I've been struggling with in my writing, trying to be too factual, too journalistic. Maybe I need to embrace the emotional truth over the literal truth. They sat together on the boulder, sharing trail, mix, and water, while discussing the intersection of art and authenticity. Maya found herself opening up about her fears, not just about money and family expectations, but about the deeper terror that she might not be as talented as she hoped. What if I've been deluding myself? She asked, voicing the question that had haunted her since leaving her job. What if I'm just another wannabe artist who gave up security for an impossible dream? Connor was quiet for a moment, studying her sketch of the lake. Can I tell you something my mentor in Montana said to me? Sure. Ernest Mayfield, the rancher I told you about. One day I was helping him repair a fence, and I was complaining about feeling like an outsider, like I didn't belong in their community. He stopped working and looked at me like I was the biggest fool he'd ever met. Connor's voice softened with memory. He said, son, belonging isn't about where you come from. It's about paying attention to where you are. Maya absorbed this understanding, the deeper meaning. You think I belong in art because I pay attention to it. I think you belong in art because you can't help yourself. The way you see the world, the way you translate emotion into visual language, that's not something you can fake or force. It's just who you are. Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed with another call from Elena. She glanced at the screen, then at Connor's expectant face. I should probably take this, she said apologetically. Of course, I'll give you some privacy. Connor walked toward the far end of the lake while Maya answered the call, steeling herself for an interrogation. Maya, finally, where the hell are you? Hi, Elena. I'm fine. Mom called the hotel you mentioned, and they have no record of your reservation. She's convinced you've been kidnapped or worse. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her deception. I changed my plans. I'm still in Colorado, just exploring different places. Different places, Maya. You made specific reservations. You don't just change plans. People change plans all the time. You don't. You're the most organized person I know. You plan your grocery shopping 2 weeks in advance. Elena's point was uncomfortably accurate. Maya had built her entire adult life around careful planning and risk mitigation. The spontaneous decision to travel with Connor represented such a departure from her normal behavior that she barely recognized herself. Maybe I'm trying something new, Maya said defensively. Or maybe you're having some kind of breakdown. Quitting your job, disappearing to Colorado, lying to family. I didn't quit my job. Maya interrupted the lie coming out automatically. Silence stretched across the phone line. When Elena spoke again, her voice was dangerously quiet. Maya Elena Rodriguez, what did you just say? Maya's stomach dropped. She had used the past tense without thinking, revealing the secret she had been guarding for 3 weeks. Elena, you quit your job. Oh my God, you actually quit your job and didn't tell us. I can explain. How long ago? 3 weeks. 3 weeks? And you've been lying to Mom this entire time. Maya could hear Elena pacing a habit their sister had inherited from their mother during moments of extreme stress. I was going to tell you both when I got back, Maya said weakly. Tell us that you threw away 7 years of career building for what to become a starving artist. Do you have any idea what Mom went through to give us stability? What Dad would think about you just giving up everything he worked for? The words hit Maya like physical blows. Elena had always been the practical one, the sister who understood their parents' sacrifices in concrete terms. But hearing their father invoked in service of fear and limitation felt like betrayal. Dad wanted us to be happy, Maya said, her voice shaking. Dad wanted us to be secure. There's a difference. Is there? Because I've been secure for 7 years and I've been miserable. Miserable beats homeless, Maya. Across the lake, Maya could see Connor skipping stones across the perfect surface, each throw creating concentric circles that spread outward before disappearing. She envied his apparent peace, the way he seemed comfortable with uncertainty. I have savings, Maya said. I'm not going to become homeless. For how long? 6 months, a year, and then what? I don't know. You don't know, and Elena's voice was flat with disbelief. Maya, you always know. You research every decision to death. You read restaurant reviews before trying new places. And you want me to believe you quit your job without a plan? Maybe I'm tired of planning everything. Maybe I want to see what happens when I trust myself for once. And where are you doing this soul searching? Because it's clearly not at the hotel you told Mom about. Maya hesitated, knowing her answer would only fuel Elena's concern. I'm traveling with someone. Someone what? Someone, Maya, please tell me you haven't fallen for some online scammer who, he's not a scammer, he's a writer. We met at the airport and decided to explore the mountains together. The silence that followed was so profound that Maya checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Elena, let me get this straight. You quit your job 3 weeks ago, lied to family about it, and now you're road tripping through Colorado with a complete stranger you met at an airport. When you put it like that, it sounds like you've lost your mind, which given the circumstances might actually be the case. Maya felt tears building behind her eyes, a mixture of frustration and shame that threatened to overflow. Elena, I know this looks crazy, but it doesn't just look crazy, Maya. It is crazy. And Mom is going to absolutely lose it when she finds out. You're going to tell her, I'm going to tell her the truth because that's what family does. We don't lie to each other about life-altering decisions. The accusation stung because it was accurate. Maya had never kept secrets from her family before, had never made major decisions without extensive consultation and approval. I need more time, Maya said desperately, to figure things out, to have something positive to report. Time for what? To get your heart broken by some stranger, to burn through your savings, to realize that romantic fantasy doesn't pay rent. Maya looked across the lake at Connor, who was now sitting on a fallen log, writing in his notebook with the focused intensity she was beginning to recognize. He looked up as if sensing her attention and offered a small wave that made her chest tighten with unexpected emotion. Maybe it's not about money, Maya said quietly. Everything is about money when you don't have it. I have to go. Maya, wait. I'll call you tomorrow. And Elena, please don't tell Mom yet. Give me one more day. Maya ended the call before her sister could protest, her hands shaking as she lowered the phone. She sat in the mountain silence, feeling the weight of her family's expectations pressing down like the thin air at altitude. Connor approached cautiously, reading her expression, with the sensitivity she was learning to expect from him. Everything okay? My sister knows I quit my job. She thinks I'm having a breakdown. Are you, The question was asked without judgment, with genuine curiosity about her state of mind. Maya considered it seriously. Maybe, she said finally. If a breakdown means questioning everything you thought you wanted, then yes. Connor settled beside her on the boulder again, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body in the cool mountain air. When I was writing my first book, he said, I called my editor in a panic about 6 months in. Told him I thought I was losing my mind, that the story was taking over my life in ways that felt unhealthy. What did he say? He said, that's how you know you're writing something that matters. If it doesn't change you, it probably won't change anyone else either. Maya absorbed this, thinking about the parallels between Connor's creative crisis and her own life upheaval. Do you think your family would understand if you explained it differently? Connor asked. Not as giving up security, but as pursuing something that actually fulfills you. My family doesn't really think in terms of fulfillment. They think in terms of survival and stability. Art feels like luxury when you have been poor. But you're not poor now. No, but the fear remains, the assumption that happiness is less important than security. Connor nodded thoughtfully. I understand that. My parents wanted me to be a lawyer, safe profession, steady income, social respectability. When I told them I was going to write travel books, my mother actually cried. Do they support you now? They're proud of the success, but I think they still see it as an extended phase rather than a real career. Every time I visit, my dad mentions law school applications as if it's still an option. Maya felt a kinship with Connor that went beyond their shared artistic struggles. They were both fighting against the gravitational pull of other people's dreams for their lives. Can I ask you something? She said. Always. Yesterday when we exchanged suitcases, did you look through mine? Connor's cheeks reddened slightly. I started to, just to make sure I had the right bag, but it felt too invasive, so I stopped. I looked through yours. Oh, I found your journal. I didn't read it extensively, but I saw enough to know you write about more than just travel. Connor was quiet for a moment, his hands fidgeting with his camera strap. What did you see? Observations about people. Conversations overheard in coffee shops. Descriptions of strangers that made them feel real and important. Maya paused, choosing her words carefully. You write about loneliness a lot. I suppose I do. Is that why you suggested we travel together? Because you recognized another lonely person. Connor met her eyes, and Maya saw vulnerability there that made her breath catch. Partially, he admitted, but also because talking to you was the first time in months that I felt like myself again. Not the successful author, not the blocked writer, just Connor. Maya understood completely. The careful identity she had constructed around her career had become a prison, defining her in ways that felt increasingly false. I feel the same way, she said. Like I've been playing a character for so long that I forgot who I actually am underneath. They sat in contemplative silence, watching light move across the water as clouds drifted overhead. Maya realized that this moment sitting beside a lake with a man she barely knew, having conversations that cut straight to the core of her fears and dreams, felt more authentic than anything she had experienced in years. Connor. Yeah, my sister thinks I'm making terrible decisions. What do you think, Connor? Maya considered the question, weighing the fear and uncertainty against the sense of rightness she felt in this moment. I think maybe terrible decisions are the only ones worth making. Connor smiled and Maya felt something shift between them, a deepening of connection that had nothing to do with the romantic tension they had carefully negotiated and everything to do with the recognition of kindred spirits. Want to see something? Connor asked, reaching for his notebook. Maya nodded and he opened to a page covered with his neat handwriting. I wrote this morning before you woke up. First thing I've written in months that felt honest. Maya read the passage which described their meeting at the airport with a combination of detail and emotion that made the mundane interaction feel mythic. This is beautiful, she said. You made me sound much more interesting than I actually am. I wrote what I saw, which was someone brave enough to say yes to possibility. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. I don't feel very brave. Bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing it anyway. Before Maya could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Elena. I'm telling Mom tomorrow if you don't. This has gone on long enough. Maya showed Connor the message, watching his expression grow concerned. What will you do? He asked. Call her tonight, I guess. Try to explain in a way that doesn't sound completely insane. Would it help to practice I could pretend to be your mother, let you work through the conversation? The offer was so thoughtful, so perfectly tuned to her anxiety that Maya felt tears threaten again, but this time from gratitude rather than frustration. You'd do that? Of course. We're partners, remember? Maya nodded, thinking about the strange alchemy that had transformed two strangers into allies in less than 24 hours. She wasn't sure what to call the connection growing between them, but it felt like something she wanted to protect. Thank you, she said simply. Always. As afternoon light began to shift toward evening, they packed up their respective art supplies and began the hike back to the parking area. Maya felt the weight of the phone call awaiting her, but also a new sense of determination. Whatever her family's reaction, she was beginning to believe that the life she was building, uncertain and scary as it was, might actually be worth fighting for. And having Connor as an ally in that fight made all the difference. They stopped for lunch in Grand Lake, a small town that existed primarily to serve visitors to the national park, but had managed to retain enough authentic character to feel welcoming rather than artificial. The restaurant Connor chose was the kind of place where locals gathered for coffee and gossip, where the waitress called everyone honey, and the menu featured comfort food prepared with genuine care. Maya ordered chicken and dumplings, while Connor opted for a burger that came with hand-cut fries and a side of local history from their waitress Dorothy, who had lived in Grand Lake for 63 years and had opinions about everything from the weather to the tourists to the way the government was managing the national park. You two aren't from around here, Dorothy observed, refilling their coffee cups with the practiced efficiency of someone who had been serving travelers for decades. Denver area, Connor said diplomatically. Mm-hmm. And what brings you to our little corner of paradise? Maya and Connor exchanged glances. They had developed a shorthand for these interactions. Connor would handle the social navigation, while Maya observed and absorbed details for potential artistic inspiration. Research, Connor said. I'm a writer and Maya's an artist. We're interested in how landscape influences creative work. Dorothy's expression brightened with genuine interest. Oh, that's lovely. We get plenty of photographers and painters through here, especially during aspen season. You picked a good time. Colors should be perfect for another week or two. She disappeared to attend to other customers, leaving Maya and Connor to navigate their meal and the complex emotions stirred up by the morning's phone call. Want to talk about your conversation with Elena? Connor asked gently. Maya poked at her dumplings, appetite diminished by anxiety. She's not wrong about the practical concerns. I do tend to plan everything extensively. This whole trip traveling with you, it's completely unlike me. Is that necessarily bad? I don't know. Maybe I plan everything because that's who I am, not because of external pressure. Connor considered this while adding salt to his fries. Can I share an observation? Go ahead. Yesterday, when you were sketching the mountains, you didn't plan those strokes. You just responded to what you saw, let your hand follow your eye. The result was more authentic than anything you could have planned. That's different and that's art. Or is art just life without the safety net of overthinking? Maya absorbed this perspective, recognizing the truth in it. Her best artistic work had always emerged from intuition rather than calculation. My family won't see it that way, she said. Your family loves you. When they see that you're genuinely happier, genuinely more yourself, won't that matter more than their initial fear? I hope so, but my mom has been through so much, sacrificed so much for stability. It feels selfish to choose uncertainty when she works so hard to give me options. Connor set down his burger, giving Maya his full attention. What if it's not about choosing uncertainty over stability, but about choosing authentic happiness over comfortable numbness? The reframing was simple but profound. Maya had been thinking about her decision as abandonment of her family's values, when perhaps it was actually an honoring of their deeper hope for her well-being. You make it sound so clear, she said. It's easier to see clearly when it's someone else's life. Dorothy returned to check on their meal, lingering long enough to share the story of her own artistic ambitions, a dream of becoming a painter that she had deferred for marriage and children and practical concerns until one day she realized she was 78 years old and had never even tried. I started taking art classes 3 years ago, Dorothy said with satisfaction. Not good at it yet, but I'm getting better. And I sleep better at night knowing I'm finally doing something just for me. After she left, Maya and Connor sat in contemplative silence, both absorbing the lesson embedded in Dorothy's casual revelation. Regret is scarier than failure, Connor said finally. Yeah. They finished their meal while discussing lighter topics, the afternoon's hiking plans, Connor's photography techniques, Maya's observations about the interplay between natural beauty and human commercialization. But underneath the surface conversation, Maya felt a growing sense of resolve about the difficult phone call awaiting her. As they prepared to leave, Dorothy approached their table one final time. You two have good energy together, she said, ignoring their protest that they were just friends. Whatever you're both running from, you're running towards something better. I can tell. Outside the restaurant, Maya and Connor walked slowly toward their car, reluctant to leave the cocoon of warmth and wisdom Dorothy had provided. She was right about the energy, Connor said quietly. What do you mean? This morning when you were on the phone with your sister, I could feel your stress from 50 yards away, but also your strength, your determination to figure things out. Maya looked at him curiously. You felt all that? I'm a writer. I pay attention to emotional undercurrents. Or you're exceptionally empathetic. Maybe both. They reached the car, but neither made a move to get in. The afternoon had turned golden, that particular quality of mountain light that made everything appear touched by magic. Connor. Yeah. Thank you for not trying to solve my problems, for just witnessing them. Thank you for trusting me with them. Maya felt that familiar flutter of attraction mixed with deeper recognition, the sense that Connor understood not just her words, but her emotional language. It was dangerous territory for two people who had agreed to maintain platonic boundaries. We should keep moving, she said, more to break the tension than from any real urgency. Yeah, Connor agreed, but his eyes lingered on her face with an intensity that made Maya's pulse quicken. They drove deeper into the mountains as afternoon stretched toward evening, following winding roads that revealed new vistas around every curve. Connor had convinced Maya to take a detour to see a historic lodge that he remembered from previous research, a grand log structure built in the 1920s that had hosted everyone from European royalty to Hollywood stars seeking authentic wilderness experiences. The lodge sat beside a pristine lake, its rustic elegance a perfect marriage of luxury and wildness. They parked in the nearly empty lot and walked around the building, admiring the craftsmanship that had gone into creating something both monumental and harmonious with its natural setting. This is what I want to capture in my writing, Connor said, photographing the way afternoon light played across the lodge's weathered logs. The marriage between human ambition and natural beauty, when it works when the man-made elements enhance rather than diminish the landscape. Maya settled on a bench facing the lake, pulling out her sketchbook once again. This time she drew not the obvious beauty of mountains and water, but Connor himself, the way he moved through space with increasing confidence, the unconscious grace of someone rediscovering his purpose. "Are you drawing me?" he asked, looking up from his camera. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Maybe. Can I see?" She hesitated, then turned the sketchbook toward him. The drawing showed Connor in profile, captured in the moment of lifting his camera to his eye. Maya had emphasized the concentration in his expression, the sense of someone fully present in his work. "This is how you see me," Connor asked quietly. "It's how you look when you're doing what you love." Connor studied the sketch for a long moment. "No one's ever drawn me before." "Really? Really, it's strange seeing yourself through someone else's eyes." "Good strange or bad strange?" "Good strange, very good strange." And they were sitting closer now. The sketchbook balanced between them, creating an excuse for proximity. Maya could smell Connor's cologne mixed with pine air, and sunshine could count the gold flecks in his green eyes. "Maya," Connor said softly. "Yeah. I know we said no romantic complications, but I have to tell you, spending time with you is making me remember what it feels like to be inspired." Maya's heart performed an intricate dance against her ribs. "Connor, I'm not asking for anything to change. I just wanted you to know." Before Maya could respond, her phone rang with Elena's distinctive ringtone. The spell broken, they moved apart slightly, reality reasserting itself with jarring intensity. "I should take this," Maya said apologetically. Connor nodded and walked toward the lake to give her privacy, but not before Maya caught something in his expression that looked like disappointment mixed with relief. "Elena," Maya answered, steeling herself for another difficult conversation. "Maya, thank God. Look, I'm sorry about earlier. I was harsh." The unexpected apology caught Maya off guard. "You were protecting me, I understand that. I was scared for you, but Mom and I talked and she made me realize something." "What?" "We've been so focused on security that we forgot Dad's other lessons about courage, about following your heart, even when it's scary." Maya felt tears threaten, remembering her father's quiet encouragement of her childhood art projects, the way he would study her drawings with the seriousness of a museum curator. "Elena, Mom wants to talk to you, not to lecture you, but to understand. Can you call her tonight?" "Yes, I was planning to anyway." "And Maya, this writer you're traveling with, are you being careful?" Maya looked across the lake at Connor, who was skipping stones with the focused intensity of someone trying to give her space while clearly worrying about her conversation. "I'm being smart," Maya said. "And yes, I'm being careful." "Good, because you deserve happiness, even if it comes in unexpected packages." After Elena hung up, Maya sat in the mountain quiet, processing the unexpected support from her family. She felt lighter somehow, as if permission to pursue her dreams had been weight she hadn't realized she was carrying. Connor approached slowly, reading her expression, hopefully. "Better news this time?" he asked. "Much better. My family wants to understand rather than just worry." "That's wonderful." "Connor, much. Yeah, earlier when you said spending time with me was inspiring you, I meant it. Well, spending time with you is making me remember what it feels like to be brave." Connor's smile was soft and genuine. "Then we're even." As evening light began to paint the mountains in shades of rose and gold, Maya felt something fundamental shift inside her. The fear was still there, but it was balanced now by possibility, by the growing certainty that some risks were worth taking regardless of their outcome. And sitting beside Connor, watching him work with renewed passion while she filled her sketchbook with moments worth preserving, Maya realized that the most important discovery of this unexpected journey might not be about art or writing at all, but about learning to trust the quiet voice inside her that whispered, "Yes, this is right. This is worth it. This is who you're meant to be." Maya stared at her phone for 10 minutes before finding the courage to dial her mother's number. She had retreated to her motel room after dinner, needing privacy for what promised to be the most difficult conversation of her adult life. Through the thin wall, she could hear Connor moving around his room, giving her space while remaining close enough to provide support if needed. The phone rang twice before her mother answered. Mija, Elena said you wanted to talk. Carmen Rodriguez's voice carried the particular mixture of love and worry that Maya had known since childhood. It was the voice that had sung lullabies in Spanish, that had praised every crayon drawing and school project, that had also delivered lectures about responsibility and the importance of planning for the future. Hi, Mom. Yes, there are some things I need to tell you. Elena said you quit your job. Maya closed her eyes, grateful that her sister had handled the initial revelation. 3 weeks ago, silence stretched across the phone line. Maya could picture her mother sitting at the kitchen table, where they had shared countless conversations, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew you'd be worried and disappointed. Mija, I'm always worried about you. That's what mothers do. But disappointed. Carmen paused, and when she continued, her voice was softer. Tell me why you left. Maya had rehearsed this conversation dozens of times, but sitting alone in a motel room in the Colorado mountains, all her careful explanations seemed inadequate. I was dying there, Mom. Not literally, but spiritually. I was designing logos for companies I didn't believe in, creating marketing materials that felt empty. Every day I stayed, I could feel my creativity withering. And you couldn't find another job, something better in the same field. It wasn't the specific job. It was the whole direction my life had taken. I became so focused on security that I forgot about purpose. Maya heard her mother sigh, a sound weighted with decades of difficult decisions. Misha, when your father and I came to this country, we had nothing but hope and determination. We worked jobs we hated, lived in places that felt foreign, all so you and Elena could have choices we never had. I know, Mom. Let me finish. We wanted you to have choices, not just security. Your father, Carmen's voice caught slightly, your father used to say that the worst poverty was not being able to pursue your dreams. Maya felt tears building behind her eyes. She had been so focused on her mother's fears that she had forgotten her father's aspirations for his daughters. I remember him saying that, Maya whispered. He was so proud of your art, Mija. He kept every drawing you ever made in a box in his closet. After he died, I put them away because looking at them made me too sad, but they're still there. Really, really. And looking at them now, seeing the joy you put into those pictures, maybe I've been too focused on keeping you safe instead of keeping you happy. Maya wiped away tears, feeling a weight she had carried for years beginning to lift. Are you angry? She asked. I'm scared, Carmen admitted. Art is uncertain, unpredictable. But so is everything else, isn't it? Your secure job didn't make you happy, and happiness matters too. Elena said you wanted to understand. I want to know what comes next. Do you have a plan? Maya looked around the modest motel room, thinking about the unexpected journey that had led her here. I'm figuring it out. I'm traveling with someone right now, exploring new places, rediscovering what inspires me. Someone? A writer named Connor. We met by accident and decided to travel together. Another pause. Maya could practically hear her mother's protective instincts engaging. Are you? We're friends, Mom. Partners in figuring out our lives. And you trust him? Maya considered the question seriously. 2 days ago, Connor had been a complete stranger. Now he felt like one of the most trustworthy people she had ever met. I do. He's kind and thoughtful, and he's dealing with his own creative struggles. We're helping each other remember who we want to be. Where are you now? Colorado, the Rocky Mountains. It's beautiful here, Mom. I've been drawing again, really drawing, not just designing. I feel like myself for the first time in years. Carmen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a warmth that Maya hadn't heard in their conversations about career matters. Your father would have loved that. He always said the mountains were where he felt closest to God. I think I understand what he meant now. Mija. Yes. Come home when you're ready, not when you think you should, and bring your drawings. I want to see what's making you happy. After they hung up, Maya sat in the mountain quiet, feeling as though a fundamental shift had occurred in her relationship with her family. The fear of disappointing them hadn't disappeared entirely, but it was balanced now by their love and trust in her judgment. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. Maya, how did it go? She opened the door to find Connor holding 2 cups of hot chocolate, his expression anxious and hopeful. Better than I expected, she said, accepting the warm cup gratefully. Much better. Your family is supportive. They're scared but supportive. My mom reminded me of things my dad used to say about following your dreams. I think I'd forgotten that their sacrifices were meant to give me freedom, not restrict it. Connor's smile was genuinely relieved. That's wonderful. You look lighter somehow. I feel lighter, like I've been holding my breath for months and can finally exhale. They settled on the small porch outside their room, sharing the hot chocolate and watching stars emerge in the clear mountain sky. The night was cold enough to make their breath visible, but sitting close together generated enough warmth to make the temperature comfortable. I have a confession, Connor said, after a few minutes of comfortable silence. Oh, I started writing again. Really writing. 3 pages tonight about this place, about the lodge we visited, about the way Dorothy talked about art like it was medicine. Maya felt a surge of happiness that surprised her with its intensity. Connor, that's amazing. It felt natural, like remembering how to breathe after holding your breath underwater. What changed? Connor looked at her directly, his expression serious in the starlight. You changed. Being around someone who's brave enough to pursue authenticity over security reminded me why I became a writer in the first place. I don't feel very brave. You're traveling with a stranger, calling your family to tell them you've upended your life, drawing pictures of mountains instead of corporate logos. If that's not brave, I don't know what is. Maya absorbed this perspective, seeing her recent decisions through Connor's eyes rather than her own anxious filter. Can I read what you wrote? She asked. Tomorrow. Tonight I want to focus on this moment right here. This moment, 2 people figuring out their lives, sharing hot chocolate under more stars than should be legal, feeling like the world is full of possibility instead of limitation. Maya looked up at the sky, amazed by the density of stars visible in the mountain darkness. In Portland, light pollution obscured all but the brightest celestial objects. Here the Milky Way stretched across the heavens like a river of light. I've never seen so many stars, she said. City living makes us forget how vast everything is, how small our daily worries are in the context of infinite space. Is that why you write about landscapes, to remind people of their place in something larger? Partially, but also because wild places strip away pretense. They don't care about your resume or your social status or your 5-year plan. They just ask you to be present, to pay attention, to appreciate beauty without trying to possess it. Maya understood completely. Her best art had always emerged from similar moments of pure attention, when she stopped trying to create something marketable and simply responded to what moved her. Connor. Yeah. Tomorrow can we go somewhere even more remote? I want to see how far we can get from civilization. I was hoping you'd say that. There's a place I've been wanting to visit, an old mining town that's been mostly abandoned since the 1940s. It's about 3 hours from here, accessible only by 4-wheel drive roads. Sounds perfect. They finished their hot chocolate in companionable silence, each lost in private thoughts about the unexpected direction their lives had taken. Maya felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of being exactly where she belonged at exactly the right moment. I should get some sleep, she said eventually, though she was reluctant to break the spell of the evening. Yeah, me too. Long day tomorrow. But neither of them moved. The night was too beautiful, the connection between them, too precious to abandon for something as mundane as sleep. Maya. Thank you for saying yes to this crazy adventure. Thank you for suggesting it. Connor stood and extended his hand to help her up. When their fingers touched, Maya felt that familiar electric current, stronger now than it had been at the airport. She looked into his eyes and saw her own growing feelings reflected there. Good night, she said softly. Good night. Maya woke to the sound of rain against her window, a steady percussion that spoke of serious weather rather than a passing shower. She checked her phone, 6:30 a.m., with a weather alert warning of an approaching storm system that could bring significant snow to elevations above 8,000 feet. A knock on the adjoining wall was followed by Connor's voice. Maya, you awake? Yeah, checking the weather? Same. Looks like we might need to adjust our plans. Maya opened her door to find Connor already dressed, studying weather maps on his phone, with the concerned expression of someone who understood mountain conditions. How bad is it? She asked. Potentially serious. The storm is moving faster than predicted, and that mining town I wanted to show you is at 9,500 feet. We could get snowed in. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Connor looked up from his phone, surprised by her response. You're not worried about being stranded. I'm more worried about playing it safe and missing something extraordinary. This could be genuinely dangerous, Maya. Mountain storms in October are unpredictable. Are you trying to talk me out of it or talk yourself into it? Connor studied her face, reading the determination there. Both, probably. What does your gut tell you? That we should go, that some of the best experiences come from calculated risks, that a mining town in a snowstorm might be exactly the kind of inspiration we both need. Then let's go. They packed quickly, loading extra water, food, and warm clothes into Maya's rental car. Connor had researched the route extensively, marking alternate paths and potential shelter options on a detailed topographical map. There's a Forest Service cabin about halfway to the mining town, he explained, as they drove through the gray morning. If the weather gets too severe, we can wait it out there. The landscape transformed as they gained elevation, pine forests giving way to the stark beauty of the alpine zone. The road became progressively rougher, requiring careful navigation around potholes and rocky sections that tested the rental car's limitations. After 2 hours of steady climbing, they reached the mining town of Silver Creek, a collection of weathered wooden buildings scattered across a high valley like broken toys. Most of the structures had partially collapsed, their roofs sagging under decades of snow and neglect, but a few remained remarkably intact. My God, Maya breathed, pulling out her sketchbook before they had even parked. It's like stepping back in time. Connor was already photographing the scene, his camera capturing the interplay between human ambition and natural reclamation. Wildflowers had colonized the main street, and aspen trees grew through the windows of abandoned houses. They explored the town on foot, treading carefully through buildings that creaked ominously in the wind. Maya sketched constantly doorways, framing views of distant peaks, the geometric patterns of collapsed roof lines, the poignant beauty of possessions left behind when the silver ran out and the miners moved on. Look at this, Connor called from inside what had once been a general store. Maya found him standing before a wall covered with graffiti spanning decades, names and dates carved into the wood by visitors who had come to witness the town's slow surrender to time. 1962. Tommy and Susan forever, Connor read aloud. 1978. R.I.P. Dad, you would have loved this place. 1995. Dreams don't always come true, but they're still worth chasing. People have been coming here to process their own stories, Maya observed, using this place as a mirror for their experiences. That's exactly what I want to write about. How abandoned places become repositories for human emotion. Maya found a piece of charcoal in her art supplies and approached the wall. After a moment's hesitation, she added their own entry. Maya and Connor 2024 found ourselves by getting lost together. Connor read over her shoulder, his breath warm against her neck. Perfect. Outside, the first snowflakes began to fall, large lazy flakes that drifted through the thin mountain air like benedictions. Maya caught one on her tongue, laughing at the simple pleasure of it. We should think about heading back, Connor said, though his tone suggested reluctance. Or we could stay a little longer, experience the storm. Maya. Look around, Connor. This is magical. How often do you get to witness something like this? As if to emphasize her point, the snow began falling more heavily, transforming the ghost town into something ethereal and otherworldly. Maya sketched frantically, trying to capture the interplay between falling snow and weathered wood, between the gray sky and the golden aspen leaves that still clung to their branches. Connor resumed photographing, but Maya noticed his shots had shifted from documentary to artistic. He was capturing mood and feeling rather than just recording the scene. This is what I've been missing, he said, more to himself than to her. The intersection between story and emotion, between place and meaning. The snow continued to intensify, and within an hour the world had transformed. The mining town became a fairy tale, setting its rough edges softened by white. The silence was profound, broken only by the whisper of falling snow and their own breathing. Connor, Maya said quietly. Yeah, I need to tell you something. He lowered his camera, giving her his full attention. What is it? Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she prepared to voice what had been building between them since their first conversation at the airport. The snow fell around them like a blessing, and the ghost town felt like the perfect setting for honesty. I think I'm falling for you. The words hung between them in the snow-filled air, simple and terrifying, and absolutely true. Maya felt simultaneously relieved and panicked to have voiced what had been growing inside her for days. Connor was quiet for a long moment, snow collecting on his shoulders and in his hair. When he spoke, his voice was soft with wonder. I think I'm falling for you too. That wasn't part of the plan. No, it wasn't. We said no romantic complications. We did. And now, Connor stepped closer, close enough that Maya could see the snowflakes caught in his eyelashes, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body in the cold mountain air. Now I think maybe the best things in life can't be planned. Before Maya could respond, Connor cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It was soft and tentative at first, a question more than a statement. Maya answered by deepening the kiss, her arms wrapping around his neck as snow continued to fall around them like a curtain of stars. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily, their cheeks flushed from cold and sudden intimacy. Well, Maya said, her voice slightly unsteady, that definitely counts as a romantic complication. The most beautiful complication I've ever experienced. They might have stood there indefinitely lost in the magic of the moment, but the intensifying storm demanded attention. The snow was falling heavily now, and visibility was decreasing rapidly. We really should get back to the car, Connor said reluctantly. Maya nodded, though part of her wanted to stay in this transformed world forever, to preserve the perfection of this moment when everything had changed between them. They gathered their equipment and hurried back to the car, brushing snow off the windshield and checking the road conditions. What had been a rough but passable dirt road an hour earlier was now becoming treacherous. Can you make it down? Maya asked, suddenly aware of how isolated they were. I think so if we go slowly and stay calm. The descent was harrowing. The road had become slippery with snow and mud, requiring careful navigation around curves that dropped off into steep ravines. Connor drove with intense concentration, while Maya watched for obstacles and potential problems. Halfway down the mountain, they rounded a curve to find a large pine tree had fallen across the road, blocking their path completely. Damn, Connor muttered, putting the car in park. They got out to assess the situation. The tree was too large to move by hand, and there was no way around it. The road was cut into a steep hillside with a cliff on one side and a sheer drop on the other. How far are we from that Forest Service cabin you mentioned? Maya asked. Connor consulted his map, calculating distances and elevations. About 2 miles, but we'd have to hike, and this storm is getting worse. As if to emphasize his point, the wind picked up, driving snow horizontally across the mountainside. Visibility dropped to mere yards, and the temperature was falling rapidly. We can't stay here, Maya said, stating the obvious. No, we can't. But hiking in these conditions is dangerous too. Connor pulled out his emergency supplies, a GPS device, emergency blankets, high-energy food, and a first aid kit. Maya was impressed by his preparedness, evidence of someone who took mountain safety seriously. I say we try for the cabin, Maya said. We have supplies, we know the general direction, and staying here definitely won't work. Connor nodded, though his expression remained concerned. Stay close to me. If visibility gets worse, we might need to rope together. They loaded their backpacks with essential supplies and began hiking through the deepening snow. The trail was barely visible, marked only by occasional blazes on trees that appeared and disappeared in the swirling white. Maya had never experienced a mountain blizzard before. The storm was fierce and disorienting, creating a world of white noise and limited vision. She understood now why people got lost and died in conditions like these. It would be easy to lose the trail, to become separated, to make a wrong turn, and end up walking in circles until exhaustion and hypothermia set in. But there was also something exhilarating about it. The storm stripped away everything non-essential, reducing existence to the basics of navigation, warmth, and companionship. Maya felt more alive than she had in years, every sense heightened by the challenge of the moment. You okay? Connor called over the wind. More than okay, Maya called back, surprising herself with the truth of it. After what felt like hours but was probably only 45 minutes, they spotted the dark shape of a building through the snow. The Forest Service cabin was small but sturdy, built to withstand exactly these kinds of conditions. Connor fumbled with the lockbox, his fingers numb from cold, but eventually managed to retrieve the key. The door opened on a single room with a stone fireplace, basic furniture, and a supply of firewood that looked like salvation. Thank God. Good. Maya breathed, stamping snow off her boots. Within minutes, Connor had a fire crackling in the fireplace, while Maya inventoried their supplies. They had enough food and water for 2 days, assuming the storm didn't last longer than weather predictions suggested. Not exactly how I planned to spend the afternoon, Connor said, warming his hands near the fire. Are you disappointed? Are you kidding? This is perfect. A cozy cabin, a beautiful woman, a storm that gives us permission to ignore the outside world. It's like something out of a romance novel. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. Is that what this is, a romance novel? I don't know what this is, Connor admitted, but I know I've never felt anything like it before. Outside, the storm raged with increasing intensity. Through the cabin's small windows, they could see nothing but white, a complete whiteout that made the world beyond the walls feel abstract and distant. We might be here for a while, Connor observed. I can think of worse fates, Maya replied, and she meant it completely. They spent the afternoon in the warm glow of the fire talking with the kind of deep honesty that emergency situations sometimes foster. Maya learned about Connor's childhood in Boston, his complicated relationship with his successful but distant parents, his fear that he was a one-book wonder who had used up his allotment of literary inspiration. Connor learned about Maya's recurring dreams of opening her own gallery, her secret ambition to illustrate children's books, her terror that pursuing art might mean letting down everyone who had sacrificed for her education and security. Can I ask you something? Connor said as afternoon faded toward evening. Always. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? If money wasn't a concern, if your family was completely supportive, if success was guaranteed? Maya considered the question, letting herself imagine a world without the constraints of fear and practical concerns. I'd write and illustrate a series of children's books about a little girl who goes on adventures with her grandfather, learning about different cultures and ways of seeing the world. Based on my memories of my father who always made ordinary moments feel magical. That sounds beautiful and completely achievable. What about you? Same question. I'd write about places like this, wild places that still exist outside the influence of modern life. I'd try to capture the spiritual experience of being dwarfed by something larger than human concerns. Also completely achievable. In theory. No, not in theory, in practice. Connor, you've been writing about this place, these experiences. You're already doing it. Connor poked the fire with a stick, sending sparks up the chimney. I suppose I am. As darkness fell outside, they prepared a simple dinner from their emergency supplies. The combination of exertion, altitude, and emotional intensity had left them both exhausted but strangely energized. I keep thinking about that wall in the mining town, Maya said as they shared a can of soup. All those people leaving messages about their dreams and disappointments. What about it? We added our names to it, found ourselves by getting lost together. Do you think that's true? Connor met her eyes across the small table. I think it's the truest thing I've ever written. Outside, the wind howled around the cabin with a ferocity that made their shelter feel both precious and precarious. They were completely cut off from the outside world, dependent on each other and the basic elements of fire, food, and companionship. Connor, yeah. Earlier when we kissed. Yeah. I don't want to pretend it didn't happen, and I don't want to go back to being just friends. Connor set down his spoon, giving her his complete attention. What do you want? I want to see where this leads. I want to stop being scared of complications and start embracing possibilities. Even though we've known each other for 3 days, especially because we've known each other for 3 days and it already feels like the most important relationship of my life. Connor reached across the small table and took her hand. I feel the same way, terrified and exhilarated and more alive than I've been in years. So what do we do about it? We stop fighting it. We see what happens when two people who are brave enough to change their lives are also brave enough to risk their hearts. Maya felt tears threaten, but they were tears of relief rather than sadness. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think getting snowed in might be the best thing that's ever happened to me. Second best, Connor corrected. What's the first? Grabbing the wrong suitcase at Denver International Airport. They spent the evening curled together by the fire, sharing stories and dreams with the easy intimacy of people who had decided to trust each other completely. Maya sketched Connor's profile in the firelight while he read aloud from his notebook pages of observations and descriptions that were already forming themselves into the foundation of his next book. "Listen to this," Connor said, reading from his most recent entry. "The abandoned mining town exists in a space between past and present, between human ambition and natural reclamation. Visitors come seeking connection to history, but leave having discovered something about themselves. The place serves as a mirror, reflecting back our own dreams of finding meaning in the wilderness of modern life." That's beautiful and true. It's a start, the first honest writing I've done in 2 years. What changed? Connor looked at her directly, his expression serious in the flickering firelight. "You changed. Meeting you reminded me that the best stories come from authentic experience, not careful planning. You saved my art too. I was so afraid of failing that I had stopped trying. But watching you pursue your passion despite your fears gave me permission to do the same." Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the cabin, they had created a pocket of warmth and possibility that felt protected from all the chaos of the outside world. "Maya, I love you." The words were simple and devastating and absolutely right. Maya felt her heart expand to accommodate this new reality, this shift from careful friendship to something infinitely more precious and terrifying. "I love you too." They kissed again, longer and deeper this time, a kiss that acknowledged the magnitude of what was happening between them. When they finally broke apart, both were trembling, slightly from emotion, from the cold, from the overwhelming rightness of the moment. "What happens when the storm ends?" Maya asked quietly. "I don't know, but I know I want to find out together. Together. If you'll have me. Whatever comes next, your art, my writing, and the complicated logistics of building a life with someone, I want to figure it out together." Maya felt joy bubble up in her chest, pure and effervescent. Yes, absolutely yes. Outside, the storm began to subside, the wind dropping from a howl to a whisper. Through the cabin's windows, they could see stars beginning to appear in the clearing sky. "Look," Connor said, pointing toward the window. They stood together, arms wrapped around each other, watching the storm pass and reveal a landscape transformed by snow. The world outside was pristine and magical, unmarked by human passage, and full of infinite possibility. "It's beautiful," Maya breathed. "You're beautiful," Connor replied, and when Maya looked at him, she saw her own wonder and love reflected in his eyes. They would return to the world eventually, to family obligations and career decisions and all the practical concerns that attended adult life. But tonight, in a cabin in the Colorado wilderness, they had found something rare and precious. Two souls recognizing each other across the vast loneliness of modern existence. "I can't wait to see what we create together," Maya said softly. "Art. Art, life, love, all of it." Connor tightened his arms around her, and Maya felt the last of her resistance dissolve. She had come to Colorado seeking solitude and clarity about her future. Instead, she had found partnership and love with someone who understood her dreams because they mirrored his own. The storm had passed, but their adventure was just beginning. They woke the next morning to a world transformed. Sunlight streamed through frost-covered windows, illuminating a landscape so pristine and beautiful it seemed designed by a master artist. 3 feet of fresh snow had fallen overnight, blanketing the forest in perfect white silence. "Good morning," Connor murmured against Maya's hair. They had slept curled together on the cabin's narrow bed, sharing warmth and dreams, under emergency blankets that now seemed romantic rather than practical. "Good morning," Maya replied, stretching luxuriously in the warmth of his arms. "Sleep well." "Better than I have in months. You. Best sleep of my life." They lay together for several minutes, reluctant to break the spell of the perfect morning. Outside, the forest was waking up, birds calling to each other across the snow-muffled landscape, the distant sound of snow sliding off pine branches, the profound quiet that only comes after a serious storm. Eventually, practical concerns intruded. They needed to assess road conditions, check their supplies, and plan their return to civilization. But first, coffee and the simple pleasure of watching the world wake up through frost-covered windows. "The road will probably be impassable for hours," Connor observed, studying the depth of snow visible through the windows. "Tragic," Maya said with mock sorrow. "Absolutely devastating." They prepared breakfast from their emergency supplies, instant oatmeal and camp coffee that tasted better than any meal Maya could remember. Everything was enhanced by the aftermath of the storm, the quality of light, the purity of the air, the simple satisfaction of being warm and fed and in love. I should call my family, Maya said eventually. Let them know I'm safe. No signal up here, Connor said, checking his phone. We're completely cut off until we get back down the mountain. How do you feel about that? Liberated, the same. It's nice to exist outside the world for a while longer. They spent the morning exploring the snow-covered forest around the cabin, marveling at the way the storm had transformed familiar shapes into something magical and new. Maya sketched constantly the delicate patterns of frost on pine needles, the way morning light filtered through snow-laden branches. Connor himself, as he photographed deer tracks in the pristine snow. This is what I want my art to capture, Maya said, showing Connor a sketch of sunlight streaming through the forest canopy. Moments when the ordinary world reveals its hidden magic. That's exactly what writing should do too. Find the extraordinary in the everyday. Think we can remember this feeling when we get back to real life. I think this is real life. Everything else is just noise. Around noon, they heard the distant sound of snowplows on the main road below, the first sign that the outside world was reasserting itself. Within a few hours, the access road would probably be passable again. Ready to face reality, Connor asked. As long as you're part of that reality. Try to get rid of me. They packed their Hawaii belongings and cleaned the cabin, leaving it ready for the next travelers who might need emergency shelter. Maya felt a pang of sadness at leaving their temporary sanctuary, but also excitement about what came next. The hike back to their car was magical in a completely different way than their desperate journey through the blizzard. The snow had stopped, the sun was shining, and every step revealed new beauty. Maya felt like she was walking through a fairy tale landscape with the prince who had helped her discover her own strength. They found their rental car buried under 3 feet of snow, but otherwise undamaged. It took an hour of digging to free it, but Connor had come prepared with a collapsible shovel that proved invaluable. You're very competent for a writer, Maya observed, admiring his efficiency. You're very adventurous for a graphic designer. Former graphic designer. Right. What are you now? Maya considered the question as she helped clear snow from the windshield. An artist. A woman in love. Someone who says yes to possibility. I like all of those identities. The drive down the mountain was slow but spectacular. The storm had left the landscape pristine and otherworldly, like driving through a Christmas card painted by someone with an unlimited imagination. When they finally reached the main highway, Maya felt the familiar anxiety of returning to a world of phones and responsibilities and expectations. But this time, the anxiety was balanced by excitement about the future she and Connor would build together. What happens now, she asked as they drove toward Estes Park. Now we figure out the logistics, where to live, how to support ourselves while we pursue our art, how to integrate our lives without losing the independence that makes us interesting to each other. Sounds complicated. The best things usually are. Maya's phone buzzed back to life as they descended into cell range, immediately flooded with worried messages from Elena and her mother. She quickly sent a text assuring them she was safe and would call later with details. My family is going to want to meet you, she said. I'd like that. Will they approve? They'll love you. You make me happy, and that's all they really want. Connor reached across the console and took her hand. I can't promise this will be easy. Long-distance relationships are challenging, and we're both dealing with career transitions. I can't promise it will be easy either, but I can promise it will be worth it. As they drove back toward civilization, Maya felt a profound sense of completion, not because their story was ending, but because it was truly beginning. She had come to Colorado seeking clarity about her future and found something infinitely more valuable, a partner who understood her dreams because they shared them. The mountains rose around them, permanent and majestic, and somehow approving of the small human drama that had played out in their shadows. Maya sketched the landscape one more time, trying to capture not just the beauty of the scene, but the feeling of finding home in an unexpected place with an unexpected person. Connor, Deanna. Yeah. Thank you for suggesting this crazy adventure. Thank you for being brave enough to say yes. Always. As they descended toward the valley where their journey had begun, Maya realized that the most important thing she had discovered in the mountain, Wasn't clarity about her career or peace with her family's expectations. It was the understanding that love, real love, wasn't a complication to be managed, but a force that made everything else possible. The rest would be logistics. This was magic. Epilogue. 3 months later, Maya stood in the doorway of her new studio apartment in Denver, watching Connor set up his desk by the window that offered a perfect view of the Rocky Mountains. They had found a compromise that honored both their dreams and their practical needs, close enough to the wilderness, that inspired them both far enough from their old lives to feel like a genuine fresh start. The walls were covered with Maya's artwork sketches from their mountain adventure, alongside new pieces that captured the daily magic she had learned to see everywhere. The children's book about a little girl and her grandfather was halfway finished, with a publisher already expressing interest based on the sample pages Maya had submitted. Connor's laptop sat open on his desk, displaying the first chapter of his new book, Found Stories of Discovery in Wild Places. His editor had called it a profound meditation on how landscape shapes identity and had already scheduled it for publication the following spring. "You know what I realized," Maya said, settling into the reading chair Connor had insisted they needed. "What's that?" "We never did figure out how our suitcases got switched at the airport." Connor looked up from arranging his notebooks, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Does it matter?" "Not even a little bit." Outside their window, the mountain stood sentinel against the afternoon sky, eternal and patient, and somehow knowing. Maya picked up her sketchbook and began drawing the view. Not the mountains themselves, but the way the light fell across Connor's face as he worked the contentment that had settled around them like a comfortable blanket. Some stories began with careful planning. Others started with accidents that turned out to be exactly what you needed. Maya had learned the difference, and she knew which kind made for the better life. The suitcases had been returned to their rightful owners months ago, but the journey they had accidentally begun continued, one choice at a time, one brave decision after another, one shared adventure building toward a future neither of them could have imagined, but both were eager to create. "Hey, Maya," Connor called from his desk. "Yeah? Want to take a drive up to the mountains this weekend? I heard there's a ghost town near Leadville that might be worth investigating." Maya laughed, closing her sketchbook and walking over to kiss him. "Always," she said, and meant it with her whole heart. Outside, the mountains waited, patient and eternal, ready for whatever stories they would help write next.